in its beautiful kind of a setting here, very thriller-esque. And just wanted to do a very brief chat about, SKYJACK. So do you know that over 50 years ago, there was absolutely no airport security? Isn't that hard to believe? But what happened was, there was a rash of hijackings between 1968 and 72. And basically, there was 130 in that time, sometimes more than one a day. So you can imagine what the world was like. But ironically, the governments were a bit nervous because they thought to themselves, what if people will take a train or drive or do other modes of transportation instead of planes? They were really cautious about instituting security measures that would slow it down. And there's some irony today with that, right? As we wait in those endless security lines. They started asking the public for some feedback and some information and suggestions. And what came up was some great ideas that were sadly, not implemented, and I don't know why. Maybe you can tell me once you hear them. One of them is that every passenger would have to wear boxing gloves, because that way you couldn't carry a gun. Okay, the next one was giving the flight attendants tranquilizer darts, because if anyone's misbehaving, put them to sleep with a cocktail. I know, right?
I'll vote for that one.
And the other one was because most of the people hijacking the planes were taking them to Fidel Castro in Havana. It was basically take me to Havana, revolutionary style. They decided that it would be a great idea to build an entire fake Havana airport that's based in Florida. So when you land there, you think that the terrorists are like, oh, here we are, Havana, get off and cuffed, ready to go. So that was fun. And then my personal favorite was, let's have a trap door where we just have mark it with an X. Anyone misbehaves, lift up and out.
Out into the air.
Yes, right out. So those are the things that people were thinking instituted. Anyways, the military had X-ray technology. And so civilians basically took that and started using it now for security measures. And that's how it slowly developed with X-ray machines going through metal detectors and such that's today. And after 9/11, they tightened security so severely.
Tell us about it.
Right? It just, well, we now have special, the deadbolts on the cockpit doors. They actually can withstand a grenade. It's really something else. And what they've done now is, they've made it almost impossible. Also, in the cockpit, the pilot has a button, and this can lock the door of the cockpit, and they can press it, and basically no one can get in there for 20 minutes, and they can repeatedly press it. So what we've created now is a situation where it's wonderful. The terrorists cannot get into the cockpit. It's very, very difficult. But what happens when the enemy is already inside the cockpit? Such as the Germanwings flight with the gentleman who flew into the French Alps with everyone on board, or the Malaysian flight, which was actually, I passionately studied that case because it's just fascinating how the pilot evaded, air traffic control and went back and forth to different areas, and each country thought they had the plane in their thing. So it was very interesting. But it turns out the likely explanation for it is this gentleman was committing murder-suicide. So as a thriller author, given that bad guys couldn't get into the cockpit, I decided to, have the pilot's children, Tiger, kidnapped, so that he would basically be at the mercy of the terrorists. And so that's where the idea came from for SKYJACK. And there's so much, aviation information. I've interviewed stealth bomber pilots, test pilots, commercial pilots, and it's just been an incredible, education. And I now fly with different eyes, And 2 tips, when you're flying. One is make sure that you sit in the exit row, and if you aren't close to the exit row, please count how many chairs you are away, because if it's smoky or dark, you want to make sure that you can find the 2 closest exits by counting instead of just knowing where you can see it. And then another one, for sure, is try and keep your seatbelt tight, because the more you give on your seatbelt increases the G-force, and you can actually break your pelvis if you have a loose seatbelt versus a tight one. So when they say tighten it, tighten it. Anyway, so I just thought it'd be a lot of fun with this great group to go around the table and just for everyone to share a very quick story about their flying experience, whether it was a funny one or a very scary one. I've had both. And let's kick this off with Russ, and then we'll go.